And welcome to this episode of the Good Citizen Podcast. Today, my honor to have on Ron Evans, the president of Josiah White's. Ron, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Ron, looking forward to this conversation. As we started the podcast now over 200 episodes ago, the big idea was we all want to do something in our communities. We feel the change in our society. We know that we're called to serve the least of these in our communities, but how do we do that? What can we do? And I've just been blessed to get to know you and get to know Josiah White's as a ministry that's been serving in this space for a very long time and has a very comprehensive, strategic approach. So, Ron, would you jump in and share a little bit about your background, your position at Josiah White's, and kind of what the main idea is behind your ministry?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's good to be on here. I appreciate the work that you and your team are doing in this space. I was been leading ministries now for a while, so I've led a Christian school ministry. I led a ministry that had a Christian school and other things, a camp and some other things. And 4 years ago 5 years ago, called and joined 4 years ago into this ministry called Josiah White's. My role is CEO or president, whatever that is, but really called in this space because of really my life purpose statement, which is I will purpose in any way possible or plausible to store up treasure in heaven by emulating my Lord Jesus Christ and being a leader, a teacher, servant, and a friend in loving the unlovely. And I worked through that when I was doing my MBA work, and so all my decisions are based on that kind of framework. Is what can I do that matters for eternity? And when I was made aware of this and recruited to come here, didn't want to come. Not that I didn't want to come to Josiah White's, but I was doing good work in the Christian school world and really enjoyed that. But when I came here and saw what was happening and what could happen to engage the church into this ministry that has been here since 1850, back to re-engage the church is what I should say. It was a clear calling and something that I felt like I couldn't bring any social work experience, but I could bring leadership experience and some visioning and hopefully some fundraising and some engaging of the church in this ministry that's called Josiah White's.
I love, and this is a bit of a sidestep here, but I love that you have a personal mission statement. And again, this is not in the questions that we talked about, but I love that idea. Did you just kind of sit down with a piece of paper and say, what are my skills? What do I feel like God's calling me to do? Or I was just interested. I think listeners might, hey, that having a personal mission statement could kind of guide you in a lot of key decisions.
Yeah, it was part of my MBA program. It was one of a possible project I did, and it just really resonated with me. I was at the time making a move from running businesses to go into full-time ministry, and I thought, what do I really care about? So I had to look at that, and everything was just scripture based. And so I spent time in Romans to go through in 1 Corinthians where it talks about your gifting, and had to go through some of those studies, like what am I gifted to do? And then how do I use those gifts for eternity? And so just went through that with a professor and had other people review it with me, had my wife review it. And she said, empathy is not on your high skill list. Let's leave that off.
Thank you.
Those kind of things. It's fun to have people speak into that, and then that whole idea that comes through the Gospels all over. But Jesus said, go sell what you have and store up for yourselves treasure in heaven. So I take those things seriously. How do I store up treasure in heaven? Not for me, but so that when I can meet Jesus face to face and say what you have to bring before the throne, it would be things that matter for eternity, and so using the skills and the gifts that He's given us to do that is just all that formed into this, and so when the opportunity came for Josiah White's, That's what I looked at. That was the grid I looked at. Does this make sense? And so thanks for asking about that. But I share that pretty regularly with my staff here, and I challenge all of them. All my direct reports now have their own personal mission, and they all look different. But it's a great process to go through to help you make decisions. Otherwise, we get moved into silly things like making money and saving for retirement, and not that those aren't good, but those shouldn't be your main goal, right? Those are good stewardship things.
No, that's a great leadership point. Certainly stood out to me. So, quick question, and you've kind of shared how you were called into the ministry, but do you have a favorite story or maybe experience from your time as the president?
And Josiah White,
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many,
You're right.
but there is, the thing about being in a ministry. I've never been in a ministry that's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and I live on campus. And so, before, when you're in the Christian school world or you're in most ministries, you get to go home at night. Well, I still get to go home at night, but I'm here. And so you get involved into the life of the campus in a different way, in life of the people you work with and the students that you work with. And so one of the things I've started to do here is let the chaplains know. I said, I'd love to have a prayer partner of our students. And so I've had really, really neat prayer partners that have been here. And one of my favorite prayer partners, I won't give you a name for obvious reasons, but he gave his life to Christ. I was part of the process. I'm not the one who had the privilege of leading to Christ, but we would meet on a weekly basis and pray together. So what do you want to pray about this week? And the honesty of those conversations was so encouraging to me. And I'll just share one of them. But as we worked through that, one of them was about having a girlfriend, and I hope this is appropriate for the podcast. He's looked at me, he goes, man, he goes, I want to have sex with my girl. So what does the Bible say about that? And, just like that honest, that you would never get in a different situation. Just like, what am I supposed to do with this? And to get to share about the beauty of sex within marriage, and how, how that, and he just looking like, man, I've never heard any of this stuff, and so, so a couple of weeks before he's going, he said, I have a really tough phone call to make. I said, what's that? He said, Grandpa is the leader of the gang that I'm part of and my family's part of, and you were born into it. You don't have a choice to join the gang. You're born into the gang. And so I want to call Grandpa and tell him I'm a Christian and I want to be released from that. And if Grandpa doesn't release me from that, then I will end up putting my family at risk if I leave the gang. So my people I'm related to will be at risk. And so we prayed about that, and Grandpa released him from his obligation to be part of the gang before he went back home.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, so the things that I worked with when I was a 16, 17-year-old boy had to think through versus what this kind of situation is significantly different. And so just having that opportunity to be part of that, and just seeing that and opening my eyes to really the kind of things that the children, the adolescents and children we serve go through on a daily basis.
Wow. What a story. And it's just so encouraging that, again, as the president of a statewide organization, we'll get into all of that. That's very comprehensive. I just appreciate the leadership you've shown in saying, I'm going to be praying with these young people. I'm going to be addressing that. And I do find it refreshing sometimes, having grown up in church. And of course, the teen guys would all wrestle with this question, but he's just like, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think?
And it was so fun.
Yes. And then we sometimes, I think, if we've grown up in kind of the Christian bubble, we look at others and just say, well, get your act together, or why haven't you overcome some of these things? We don't understand just how entwined and difficult it is with family. So what a powerful story about this kid. And I'm just so grateful for that. So I wanted to jump into a little bit of Josiah White's and kind of your comprehensive approach. The first thing that, of course, stands out to me is that Josiah White's has been around since 1850, so 170 years, counting,
Right.
of new possibilities. My understanding is that he drafted a plan to help the most. I think the term he used it was deserted of children.
Mhm.
So would you tell just a little about the rich history? And I love that as we go to the state officials and we're talking about foster care, it's like, by the way, guys and girls, we've been doing this a very long time. So would you
Yeah.
share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Josiah White was an entrepreneur, a man of faith, a Quaker, or they prefer friend, and lived in Pennsylvania. Uh, just really a remarkable man, because not only was he a strong man of faith, but he was also just gifted and used his gifts. And because he used his gifts, he made a lot of money. He was an engineer. He developed the canal systems before the railroad. He to get product from the east, which at that time was about Pennsylvania, to the Midwest. And so the canal systems that used to be here, you've heard of the Erie canals and all that. There took incredible engineering prowess to figure out how to do all that. He did all that, and he made money at that. And then they realized the railroads are coming, so then he got involved and figured out how to engineer the railroading and all that. So anyway, through all that of helping people, and in his own experience, he was orphaned at the age of 8. He got to the end of his life and just said, what do I want my legacy to be?
Mm.
And so he and his daughter came west at that time to this property that we're now on, and he met with the yearly meeting of the friends. They call themselves a yearly meeting, so a group of the friends, and just said, I want to bequeath $20,000 so that you can build an orphanage, what we would call an orphanage here. And they said, no, we really think we should do this or that. And he was adamant. And $20,000 in today's dollars is probably about 2 million. And
Wow.
so it's a significant gift.
Yeah.
And he said, use half of it to buy the land and the other half to start the programming. And then he went out to Iowa, did the same thing, and got back to Pennsylvania, and soon passed away. And so his daughter carried this through based on his writings and his will. And one of the things I really appreciate about Josiah White is that in 1850, pre-Civil War, he wrote in his will that he wanted to make sure that this was for the deserted, or the least of these, who were not only friends, but also were of all colors and all nationalities. So he said in the vernacular of the day that we would equally accept and provide education, all the things, to those who would be white, colored, and Indian. So that would be the vernacular of the day. And so you think that's pre-Civil War, and he was very progressive at the time to make sure that that was true. And he and many of the friends were actually involved in the Underground Railroad. So some rich history, both from racial diversity and equality, and some of those issues we're talking about now. He was ahead of all that curve, and that's been part of our history now for 170 years, is involving the church in a way that matters for those who are near and dear to God's heart.
Such an amazing story, and I know that you recently rebranded to emphasize Josiah White's, and that that was the original vision, and that's what you continue today, with a strong biblical foundation, but reaching out to all people and serving the least of these. Yeah. So I want to jump now into your comprehensive approach, and I've been able to tour the campus and was just frankly blown away by all the moving parts. And so I wanted to walk through a little bit of the kind of strategic vision here, starting with kind of the flagship ministry that you have related to licensing foster parents. So would you explain just a little bit of the kind of nuts and bolts there? Right. And especially, I was interested in the teaching family model that you have there.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've been doing foster care since the 70s, which is new to us, right? That's only 50 years, and building off the residential. But we've been doing it for a long time, and that whole process has changed. It used to be licensed by the counties rather than the state, and we've gone through that process. and used to be much less controlled. And there was a real looseness about who belongs in foster and who doesn't belong in foster, and maybe too quick to move that direction, move kids out of the home. And so what we see is that kids are best served in the home if that home is safe, and not just safe for them physically, but safe for them emotionally, and safe, from a just who they are kind of experience. And so we've really kind of pivoted in the last 4 years when I came and said, we used to be one of the foster agencies, and there's nothing wrong with the way people do it, who just had their billboard and their advertising everywhere, just come join our particular foster agency. And when I came, I said, I want to pivot, and what I want to do is make sure that we're just recruiting from the church, because this is the church's responsibility. This is Christians' responsibility to take care of these kids. Not that it isn't other people's responsibility, but our calling, our history is that this is our responsibility to engage the church in that way. And so then we hired a full-time person. His job is just to go out and connect with churches and bring this. And now we have multiple part-time people in all of our offices in Indianapolis and Crown Point and South Bend and in Fort Wayne, Wabash, Greenwood. Anyway, we have them all now having people who are working part-time, just engaging the church and challenging them to say, we want to let your people know there is a great need here for this. And then as we started to look at what the need was, we found out that the need was really for teenagers. That it's very hard to place teenagers in foster homes. Everybody wants the infant, or the younger child, but as they get older, it is very, very hard to place those kids. And so we started challenging them for that. But then what we also found out is we had to equip them with the skills to be able to deal with that population. There's a lot of mistrust. The kids that will often get referred, it'll be maybe a sibling group, 2 or 3 kids. They've maybe been in and out of 10, 12, 15 kinds of situations. And so then we're going to families and saying, hey, we'd love you to take this 10, 12, and 14-year-old that have been in 10 different homes and make a home for them. And so, and we've had people step up to that. But then they get into that and they go, we had no idea what we were getting into. There is a lot of moving parts to this. And so we said, what is the best training out there? And it's a national organization called the Teaching Family Model. It's been around since the 70s. Boys Town is one of the organizations people may have heard of who has been using this for that time period. And so we went and found the best model out there. And we've invested the last 2.5 years of training all of our staff in the Teaching Family Model, which moves confrontation to collaboration and gives kids the life skills that they need. Skills like greeting skills, following instruction, things that will help them not only in the home, but will help them in life. And it is a very comprehensive, again, we're 2.5 years in, and we feel by year 3, next year, we'll get accredited nationally in that program. But it's been 3 years of training our staff and now training those who work with our kids in that model.
And I love that because it's, you can come into a church and say, hey, we have a real need here for foster parents. But if I remember the stats correctly, something like 90% of foster parents quit after the first year, first placement, because hey, let's take the foster kid. And then you get a 16-year-old or maybe a 13, a 14, and a 17-year-old, and they're mad at their parents, but then they're mad at you for not being with their parents. And so I love that you are going in and saying, okay, we're going to equip you. We know you're called to do it, but we're going to equip you. And we're going to provide, if I understand correctly, 24/7 support. If you get a problem, you call.
Yeah.
So again, just so practical, I think so helpful. So that's kind of the foster care piece. And if you're in the state of Indiana and you feel led to jump into this, you're part of a church, would love to connect you with Josiah White's and get that started. So the next piece of kind of my understanding of this holistic, comprehensive approach is then kind of, you also emphasize family preservation and reunification. As you said, the best place for kids with mom and dad in a safe home. So what are the nuts and bolts of that effort?
Right. Yeah. And so again, just so appreciative of Director Stigdon and what DCS has come up with. They're really pioneering this movement where DCS will come into a home and they'll be called. And what'll happen is typically a teacher will see, kids wearing the same clothes all the time, not having food, and they'll call DCS. DCS will go in and they'll find out this is not a abuse issue. It's a lack of resources issue, and so it's classified as a neglect. Well, in the past, that would be a situation where DCS would remove those children from the home. Children and parent or parents are getting along well. It's a healthy, except for there just isn't beds. There isn't food. They just don't have the budgeting skills, whatever that is. And so then DCS will actually contract with us, and we put a team together that has a clinical person and a life coach, and we'll go in and meet with that family, and we'll put a plan together to help them overcome what those neglect issues are. But we'll also then involve the church. And we have a number of partner churches through the Care Portal that we will say, hey, we have this need. They just need a crib for the baby and a bed, and they need food to get through this month, and then we'll keep work, and we'll put that out to our network, and the church will respond to that almost immediately, and come in and provide those material needs. And again, the material needs, we can go, oh, they're lazy or whatever. And it's never that. That's never the case. We're all victims of situations where we've been laid off unusually. We have medical bills that come up, and they get overwhelmed. And the parent or parents are trying to choose: do we pay the medical bill? Do we provide food? Do we do school? And here's a church to step in now, and all of a sudden they've gone from, oh, I thought those were people who sat in that building, to these are people who are in my home. And they brought mattresses, and they brought food, and it's just an exciting time to be part of that, where we're connecting and in doing that.
And I'm grateful for that, because longtime listeners of the podcast will remember a conversation with Doug Weinberg about bringing Care Portal to Indiana. Senator Andy Zay, who helped spearhead that effort in the Indiana legislature, and how that's fitting into this, where the church can sign on and provide those physical kind of tangible needs. Right. So that kind of wraps up a little bit. We could probably spend the entire podcast just talking about that, but you also provide residential, if I understand correctly, kind of substance abuse treatment for students, for teenagers. Right. So what are the details of that?
Yeah, so we work with DCS, and so when kids get in trouble with the law, and they've been picked up, and so they've sat before a judge and said, we want to give you a second chance, rather than put you in a juvenile detention center. We'd like to put you in a place where you can learn the skills and do well as you leave that. If that's the option. So we will have students come join us for that, and they'll generally be here for about 6 months. So they're here for a couple of reasons, substance abuse being a leading one. And so we have our own clinical staff that works with them. And what we found is about 85%, I'm probably low on that percentage, of the kids who come here have significant trauma in their life. And so we've trained all of our clinical staff in a new understanding of how to help kids unpack trauma called EMDR. It's eye motion. It's involved in some ways to help them relook at their life, and then be able to re-see that thing that happened to them, and then look at it in a different way. And just give you a quick example. So, I'm a 3-year-old in home. Mom is getting beat up by a male. Maybe it's a husband, maybe it's somebody else. And they're looking at that 3-year-old and saying, if you weren't such a bad kid, this wouldn't happen to your mom. And so they carry that through their life, right? So how do you deal with that hurt? How do you process that as a 3, 4, 5-year-old? You can't, other than they're an adult, they must mean this, and I must be a rotten person. And so that comes out through that clinical work, where we can help them re-see that thing and go, wait a second, that was a bad person. It had nothing to do with you. And then they can start seeing that opportunity. And so we bring the clinical side of it, then we bring the life skills through the teaching family model. We bring vocational skills through the greenhouse work and through the 50 East that we've created. And then obviously we bring Jesus into it through a staff chaplain who meets with them on a regular basis. He just shared yesterday, 3 girls give their life to Christ this week, and he said, and I don't accept that they've accepted Jesus. I want to know they've been converted. And he just described that conversion experience and the freedom that's come out of that darkness that left. And so all of those work together. And what we found is we're all made with mind, body, and soul. And to say we're going to treat the soul without treating the mind and the body, or treating one without the rest, is never effective. And so for us to have the kind of opportunity to offer hope and transformation through Christ to those we serve, we know that we have to be the best at the clinical, we have to be the best in the vocational training, we have to be best in the skills training, and we have to be very intentional on the spiritual life component of it.
So just two quick follow-ups, just from my experience at the campus, was just how well kept, professional, almost like a school setting, almost like a home setting. It's in a rural part of the state, so it's peaceful, beautiful. And so I was just thinking, we're a great place for these kids that are going through some of the trauma that you've described, that have now run into the law, to be able to come to this place and just be loved and instructed. And then the other one was I did have a chance to go into the chapel and meet the staff chaplain. And he took me up to the office upstairs. And in the office upstairs was this old, pulpit that I think could probably survive an atomic blast. Okay. It was just,
Exactly.
but it was just, he had it there just as a kind of a source of inspiration to think of that the gospel has gone forward from this pulpit since the 1850s, and that he was able to continue that on, and just was able to sense his love for the kids and his drive to say, hey, the answer is Jesus. So that was just such a powerful moment, being able to visit. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
So then you mentioned, all right, so you help with the foster care, you help with family preservation. If the kids are in trouble with the law, they've run into that, you provide that residential help for them. But then I was fascinated by the 1850 cafe, as well as the experiential learning center, and the greenhouse fascinated me because I'm used to, generally you have to have dirt to grow anything, and they have these green kind of hydroponic cubes that they have stuff growing out of. So it seemed very state of the art. So I was just fascinated by that operation. So would you describe that part of it?
Yeah. So again, we want to be the best at every area of it. And we know that when our students go back, we can help lead them to Christ. We can give them life skills, but many of them have never worked. And again, I remember one of the students I talked to was talking about one of my prayer partners talking about her mom. And I said, "Tell me about your mom." Well, I'll tell you. He says, "Here's the first thing Mom said. She says, I have figured out how to live without ever working in my life. I have the government system down to the point, and I want to teach you as my child on how to live off the government the rest of your life." And they said, "But I don't want to do that, right? I want to break out of that cycle. I want to be productive." So we've looked for every way possible to bring them actual skills that can help them then when they go back into that environment. And who knows what environment they're going to go into. About a third of our kids don't even have a home to go to when they leave here at 16, 17 years old. And so we need to give them a skill so that they can be employable, and teach them the skill of how to interview and those kind of things. And so the whole greenhouse started in that we had a donor. And so I'm always speaking to donors who said it was actually a bank that said, we've repossessed a greenhouse and we'd like to donate that to you. And so
Thank
we said,
you.
awesome, great.
Yeah.
What do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
And,
Okay. Thanks.
and so we know the therapeutic value of kids working with their hands in the dirt. So we started with that and started growing plants. And then with that kind of start, we said, okay, what else can we do with this? And how do we bring more opportunities for our kids? And so we said, well, what if we had a store where we could sell these things and sell other things? And what if the store had a coffee shop and had that? And then what if we could grow our own food for our own kids? And so out of all that came the aeroponic towers where we grow our own lettuce. So when you come to 50 East and you have lunch there, and you get one of the best lettuce in the state of Indiana,
All
it's because
right.
we just grew it right next door, right? It had just been
Yeah.
picked today, and out of those towers, and the young people who will serve you are our students. And they're getting their Serve Safe certification. They're getting their barista certificates. Lots of them have been hired in coffee shops, Starbucks, and others when they leave. And then we put in just finished putting in an advanced manufacturing lab in conjunction with the Connexus Group. And so we just had our first two make it through the whole program. And so then they're now able to be hired in an Amazon and a Subaru, not an entry level, but the next level up. And so we're giving those skills as we go along here. It's just part of the whole strategy.
I think listeners can sense again that exactly why I wanted to talk to you. Each part of this is so well thought out and executed. So you have that, but then you also have, I think, the day school where the kids that are on property also attend school there.
Right. Yeah. So and we do. We have actually have two schools on campus. We have one school for residential in partnership with the local school district, and our kids go to school 4 days a week all year round, as opposed to 5 days a week and big break, because they come and go every week. We have 2 or 3 students coming, leaving, and every one of them that comes then gets an individualized credit recovery program that our school district uses to get them to graduate. And many of them will stay with that program even after they leave our residential program. In fact, I think we have more graduates out of the White School than we do any other school in the county, because they stay with that program after they leave, and they'll finish that. And I get to be part of that graduation experience. I get to go on stage with them, and how many of them said, "I never dreamt I would make it through 9th grade, let alone get a high school diploma." And wow. I mean, this is a happy day. They just can't believe they actually have a high school diploma. Which, again, I grew up in an era where you were expected to go to college, right? And the idea of getting a high school diploma wasn't even a discussion. But they may be the first one in their family who's ever had a high school diploma. And so that partnership with MSD, and then we have our own private school for our Compass Rose program, which we haven't talked about, which is a private placement program for teenage girls. So we believe strongly in having the best educational opportunities for our kids.
And that is kind of the last piece I wanted to ask you about. I know you just completed just a beautiful kind of quad there for girls. And is that just state of Indiana, or do you have kind of reach around the country with that particular effort?
Yeah, so the Compass Rose is actually we've had girls from all over the country, and a few international actually, and this is a private placement. Mom and dad, typically a pretty stable family, have a lot of times adopted. There are a lot of adopted children that come to our program, but where there has at some point, we just work with girls in this program right now, 13, 14, 15, they've gotten involved in social media, they've gotten depression, they've gotten into anxiety, suicidal ideation. Many of them have already attempted suicide. Mom and dad have tried everything they know, and they said, we need to save our girl's life. And so then we get to bring those girls in, and they spend a year with us in that program where they get the education, they get the clinical, and it's a new movement that we have where we're going to have about half our beds on our campus, 87 next year in private placement and 88 in placement by the state.
So 2 additional questions here. I was fascinated when I came to campus, and this follows up on the story you shared at the beginning, that that your home, like your residence, is right there with everything. And oftentimes with ministries, you think, well, I'm going to lead this thing, but I need a little bit of space from it. I was just fascinated that, I mean, you're right there, able to minister to the girls, to the guys that are there on campus. And so was that something that was in place prior to your coming, or is that something that you intentionally started?
It has been the model since 1860 when the first superintendent
Okay.
came on campus.
Okay.
I love the model. I really do. It is it's both challenging and rewarding, right? Because you never leave your work.
That's right.
Yeah, you just never do, even though you stay on campus. But it's incredibly rewarding to do so. And so we have, I think, of our 280 employees, I think we have about 45 or 50 who live on campus. And all somewhat tied into the direct residential work that we do here with our students to bring that stability. So just a couple of quick side notes that I want to make sure I mention before I know you need to close this. But just thinking through that, we talked about putting kids in the homes that we have. This is for many of them the first time they've all had their own bedroom. So every child who comes into our residential here, we have a separate bedroom for them, and so they have their own bedroom and they get 3 meals a day. And for many of them, this will be the first time in their life that's ever happened.
Wow.
In fact, my wife right now, we're making Christmas stockings. We'll have a candlelight service for them next week, and we have Christmas stockings for all of them. And she said, I want to make sure we get a $5 gift certificate for fast food or something in there. And what should we do with that? She's asking the residential director, and he said, I give it to their family teacher, because they may want to take that home because they won't have food at home. And we're like, oh man,
Wow.
who would have thought that was an issue, right? That they would need a $5 gift certificate so when they get home pass, that they would have at least one meal when they're at home. And so just meeting those needs and creating that campus and creating that safety. We will have, again, kids about 6 months, and often we have to be a little careful about month 5 that they don't purposely try to do something to get to stay. They'll try to do something so the judge will say, I'm going to make you stay another couple of months. That's sometimes the happiest day for them, because the stability they found, the family they found, the sense of identity that they have here.
Oh, those are powerful stories. I was going to ask, and certainly there would be listeners outside the state of Indiana, but anybody that might be in Indiana, or even that has a similar ministry close to them, what are some ways that Christians, church leaders could get engaged? I think, getting licensed for foster care would be an obvious one, but are there other ways that we can learn from this, and if close enough, could actually volunteer with your ministry?
Yeah, right. So we are, you hit it right on the head. Foster care, and then church, the care portal, the 2 easiest ways to get involved. Because we are under the authority of DCS, volunteers on campus are challenging for us, and so we're working hard. That's the next step we're going to put together, is good volunteer experiences for that, because and we appreciate what they're saying, but we want to make sure in the world that we live in that child predators don't see this as an opportunity, because it's a very vulnerable population. In fact, I mentioned a third of our kids who leave have nowhere to go, and I'll tell you, there's 2 groups are waiting for them. That's the gangs and the human traffickers. They know who they are, and they're waiting for them to be released to give them a home, right? And so just another emphasis. And we just had a student 2 days ago heard this story. He's been here over a year because they had no place to put him. It rarely happens. And just 2 days ago, and through a call like this, a family said, hey, we just got licensed for foster. We want one of your kids. And they said, we specifically want someone no one else will take. And so he's been here over a year. And so 8 o'clock at night, he got the call, tomorrow you're going to go home to a foster home. and
Wow.
they want you home for Christmas. So they're going to come
Oh,
get you
wow.
tomorrow. And he'd been here over a year, never had a dream he'd ever be able to get fostered, let
Mm.
alone adopted. And so he went home just yesterday, and the staff
Wow.
was just celebrating. It was just a great,
Amen.
great day for us when that happened, because he just, anyway, you know what it's like.
Oh, well, that could have been the podcast right there. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful thing. Well, I think perhaps an obvious question that maybe some listeners are thinking but haven't asked yet is, you say DCS or something similar to that in many states, and some Christians are kind of like, okay, hold on, wait a second, and there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of complication, but you have a continuing relationship with DCS, and so I was just going to ask you a little bit about how maybe that was fostered to your knowledge, and then some of the things that you're doing to keep a strong partnership relationship with the state, saying, hey, yes, this is the church's responsibility. The state has a biblical role to restrain evil, and
Mhm.
it's doing that role. We want to be out here to serve the least of these. And so I love it. It's just so counterintuitive, I think, for some listeners to, you're working with DCS, what?
Yeah.
So how have you fostered that, and how are you continuing building into that relationship?
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And so I'd ask, as you and I do, I'd ask anyone who listens to this to pray for Director Stigdon. She's been called to this about the same time I was called to this ministry, and just a very strong woman of faith. And so I love that she has said that she wants to make sure that the people in DCS are balanced in how they look at things, and that if they have a faith story, that they are not afraid to talk about that, to show that as part of their work experience. But there never is anything gained by being adversarial with DCS. They are in place because the church has advocated their role. The church used to take care of this. They took care of the children in their community, and so as we have stepped away from that, the state has stepped into it, and so they take their role very seriously, and I really appreciate what they do, and I really appreciate their emphasis that they've had with the care portal, and other things, preservation services, to say how can we collaborate, and so pray for them. But we meet with them on a regular basis. We ask how we can support them. Obviously, you and I had met with Director Stigdon recently. Previous to that, I just asked if I could meet with she and Deputy Director, and I just wanted to come down and ask the question how I could support them. And I walked away an hour later and got a nice note back to say that was so refreshing for us, because there's not many agencies that really come ask how we can help them. And so just the normal stuff you would do in partnership, we need to do, and we don't always agree with the decisions that they make, but in love, we try to keep relationship as the highest thing.
And that's one of the kind of principal pushes in the podcast is, hey, we're in changing times. Certainly, we may not always agree with government. Government may not always agree with us, but
Right.
we're called to this space. And I just appreciate it. And one really neat thing that happened in a recent meeting, and Director Stigdon's been on the podcast sharing, hey, we want the church to go upstream with DCS, but just that the DCS is also struggling with, or burdened about, I might say, the issue of teens getting placed with foster families. And it's different. You got a 16-month-old and you got a 16-year-old. It's just different. And I was just so blessed to see that you've taken that issue, and Josiah White's is focused on trying to deal with that, and the state saying, hey, this is a problem. And there's that partnership that we want to see. We want to minister to elected officials. We want to partner with them for the common good. And so I just wanted to stress that. I think it's just a great example of doing just that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of run through the different aspects of the ministry. Again, I know there's much more there, but is there anything else that you would like to share, anything you'd like to emphasize that I might have missed?
I don't think so. And again, I appreciate what you're doing, and in the way that you're trying to engage into the state, into what can happen in the state of Indiana. We are in an unusual time. I talk to counterparts in different states, and they're not having these kind of conversations. because the window has been shut where they even want to talk about the church being a part of anything, and so I think we have an opportunity, and I see you leading this on a statewide basis, to engage the church, and they really see us as a partner and somebody that wants to help with the situation, not be adversarial, and so that's where we should be if we really do want to reach the least of these.
Man, and so it's a great opportunity. Let's seize the day in a sense. I appreciate that. Well, if you had a billboard in which to put a message to the gospel preaching church leaders, what would you put on it?
Yeah. And you told me you're going to ask me that, and I'm still pondering what that is, because for church leaders and other committed Christians, I guess my main message was, if you want to grow as a church, you want to grow as just an individual Christian, don't look inward, look outward. Where can you in the community you're in, can you engage into this opportunity to reach the least of these, which is the poor, and the least of these is always on Jesus' heart.
And I was just noting as we're going through, and it's exactly the point of the podcast, right? We're called, our greatest emphasis is probably going to be in our own zip code. So let's get out there and try to make a difference. But just noting through the different aspects of this, that one of the things that stood out to me in your personal mission statement was kind of teacher, and that you continue to be able to pursue that role in this role as president of Josiah White's, and even help kind of teach us about how we can do this well. So, Ron, I appreciate your friendship and the ministry there. I just such a great example of serving the least of these since 1850.
Thank you, Josh.
We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Okay.